Hello! So today we like to show you how to take an existing Foundry agent and make it available in M365 Copilot. We've been working with my friend over there, Eric, to improve a sample. So hello, Eric.
Hey, nice to meet you all.
Yes, and what we're going to show you is how to take this agent and using the beauty of Bicep that you've been working on to fully automate the deployment to Azure using best practices, meaning we're going to use security best practices and take your identity right from M365 up to the call to SharePoint that is going to be done by the agent service of Foundry. So we're currently inside Foundry. You see that I've been configuring like a simple agent. It's a policy agent. So the goal of this policy agent is to be able to take document we have in a SharePoint library, which is over there, that can give you some tips about the hotel you are allowed to go into, the number of money you can spend for dinner, stuff like that, stuff we have at Microsoft, by the way. So I've got a simple instruction there, one of the model, and the knowledge is there, so you need to configure the knowledge. So you see that I've got a connection to a SharePoint knowledge. You can configure it there. You need to go to Manage Center. Then you will see some connected resources. I've got this SPO for SharePoint. And then you need to put the site URL, so put the connection to the specific document library you like to ground onto. So maybe a small tips there and also information. To be able to call the index of SharePoint, you need an M365 Copilot license. That's why, with what we've been able to do, your identity from the caller, either from Teams or M365 Copilot, will be used to check you have the license to do the grounding. So, of course, using our sample, you're not forced to use SharePoint grounding. You could use, an agent with some Fabric knowledge, or I don't know, with a connection to an API or whatever, and then your Copilot license won't be mandatory. But in this specific scenario, you will have to have an M365 Copilot license. And we've shown you another sample where we were giving you a classical agent without grounding from SharePoint. So let's give it a try to show you that it works. So I'm going inside the playground, and my prompt is, what are the hotel available? And we should see a tool call to SharePoint. So here it is. It's saying I need to check the SharePoint grounding. And you see I was able to find a document and say that this is the type of hotel you're allowed to go into. So we've been deploying that to show you how it works. So you see that we have our Azure agent to M365 ATK for Agent Toolkit, because we're going to use that. And then we have some pre-prompts, conversation starter. I'm going to add the same. You will see that you will have kind of a discussion between our code and Foundry. So we're going to send a request to Foundry in the same way we've seen what it was working inside the playground. You see that you need to do the call to SharePoint, and we have the same information returned there. So how should you do that now that you like to do that at home? So if you take our project from the GitHub sample, this is what you need to do. So you need, of course, either Visual Studio on Windows, but you can do the same on your Mac using VS Code. You just need to have a license to Visual Studio because we are using C# DevKit for that. But if I'm going back to Visual Studio, you need to have the Agent Toolkit enabled too, because we're using the Agent Toolkit to help us to deploy. We're going to provision to the cloud. First, you need to select the right M365 account. I already did that. Then I'm going to provision to the cloud. So you see this is my account. I'm going to use this subscription. I'm going to use a new tests for the resource group. So I'm going to call it David and Eric, to be sure that we're going to find it back.
Yes.
And we are both in Europe, even in French, if you may notice that from our beautiful accent. So Eric is going to speak. You will see that it doesn't have a better accent than mine, I guess. So you see when I'm going to press provision, maybe you can expect what's going to happen in background for the people, Eric.
Yeah, essentially speaking, as you just demonstrated, we had an agent in M365 Copilot that was doing SSO, so taking your user token that you're signing in M365 Copilot and passing it through using the Agent SDK to Foundry to then call the retrieval API that's bringing the SharePoint grounding. To do that, there are multiple things that need to happen. Obviously, you need to have a bot registration in Azure. So that's the first resource that we're provisioning. We're securing that bot resource using a managed identity, trying to move away from classical client ID and client secret. It's more secure, but as well, it's simpler for the dev because there is no more secret to manage, to update, and to forget about. The second part is obviously to have an Entra ID app registration for the user authentication and that SSO flow we were mentioning. Without going too much into details, we're creating that app registration. Then we configuring what we call federated credential, allowing the bot service to ask for a token on the behalf of the bot service and M365 Copilot. And we're doing all that configuration for you. It's multiple steps, and any single mistake break the whole flow, which is often frustrating. So the idea was to have an end-to-end experience where you click provision, all the Azure resources are provisioned for you and pre-configured. So then you just have to focus on enhancing that samples and so on. Maybe we can switch to Azure to look at the process in place, right?
So let's find the resource group. We should have a new one created. Here it is. This was the previous one I did the demo with. And like you explained, we currently have many resources being created.
Yeah.
So the app service that contains the bot. We even set up App Insight to help you to debug, the production, which is pretty useful. The service plan is not using a big VM. That's why sometimes it takes time to boot. We've seen that. But it's currently going on. And also something that we are doing for you is once everything will be deployed to Azure, we're going also to sideload the agent into M365 using Agent Toolkit. Because in M365, Copilot and Teams, you need a specific manifest and a specific package to reference to the bot. So we are taking the ID generated by the Bicep files, we insert that into the manifest of Teams, and we sideload with the specific APIs. So maybe there is an error.
What failed? Well, actually, it was the manifest generation.
Yes,
failed.
so
Interesting.
What you can do if it happens to you. So this is useful. It's part of the live tutorial. You can disable the validate schema. This happened during the validation of the manifest. So as we are doing currently update, because we are very close to Ignite, so we know that
like it's starting tomorrow, right?
Yeah. So we are going to do that again. So it's going to go faster because, of course, we have already provisioned stuff in the cloud. So I'm going to provision once again, and everything should be set up, provision. The way to see that we have set up that is if you look to the environment file.dev, you see the various subscription ID, the Teams app ID, the various identity we have set up. So I've just asked in this YAML file to bypass the check of the agent manifest for Teams. Go ahead.
David, I'm a bit skeptical though. Line 4 and 5, should we not add some variables there before provisioning?
No, it's automatic.
No, are you sure that I'm not fetching the Azure AI Foundry project endpoint nor the agent ID? That's still something you need to do manually. Maybe you can show us how to get that.
Yes, so to be able, you're right, like those specific variables are not automatically set up. So this is part of the work you will have to do, the only manual step you will have to do.
What? Still manual stuff?
Yeah, you need to go into the Foundry playground, take the ID, go inside Azure, and go inside the app service, and you will see that you have environment variable there, and 2 are predefined but not filled yet. So I'm going to take this one, which is the agent ID. And of course, you will be able to switch to another agent after in production. So I'm going to apply. I need to go back to there in Foundry and get the project endpoint there, copy paste, and then I need to set up inside this variable. Okay, I'm going to apply. That's checking that everything is set up. You know, you never know. The rest of the value has been completely set up, by the deployment part. So it's still processing. It should almost be down in a couple of seconds. And once it will be done, the second step is to deploy the code. So the first step is really to pre-configure, pre-build everything in Azure. So it's still going on. Then we are also taking care of deploying that to M365, and then is to deploy the code. So we need to...
David, while we're waiting, maybe we can show the old connection on the bot that were configured, and we can test it to show, the SSO flow being pre-configured.
I need to apply the
the
changes.
Smart move.
So let's go inside the bot. You're right. The bot is there. And you can explain, what are the various configuration parts.
So the first thing is the messaging endpoint. So we did learn your app service endpoint, and we pre-configured that. And if you scroll down at the bottom, actually we pre-configured 2 auth connections. So that's the way your code will be able to ask for a token. So we created the first one, which is SSO connection. This is a first connection really to have just a simple token to prove the user identity. It's really appropriate because it doesn't require any permission that would need to be consented, but just issuing you an access as a user token. So very helpful to validate that it's the right application, that you're in the right tenant, and maybe get the email address or something there. Okay.
Can I test the connection?
Of course.
So so this is something I've learned with you. If you click on that, it's a good way to check that everything was set up correctly. Most of the people were doing mistakes there. So thanks to your knowledge that has been dumped into the Bicep file, I don't have to do anything, and the SSO connection seems to work.
No, actually, let's copy the token and just decode it for people to understand. If we go to gwt.ms. T.ms. Oh yeah, French accents plus English doesn't work well.
And we see that it's being decoded. So we see that it's test account for David. This is my account test. And yes, you see that this is working fine. So this is a great way to check that the token seems to be valid. So it's a great test for you to debug and learn from what we did. And there is another connection you did.
Yeah, so we created a specific one for Azure, for AI, for Foundry, for Microsoft Foundry, because to simplify the process, here you see the only difference we have is the scope at the bottom. So we're asking for the user impersonation permission. That's what Foundry requires to do the on-behalf flow, to call the retrieval API and so on. So rather than doing some token exchange in the code, because we are developer, we're lazy, we just pre-configure the bot service, and we're asking the bot service to do all that heavy lifting, caching, and storing for us. It's also as well handling the consent if that needs to happen. And then so our code is much more simpler thanks to that.
Yep, and something you need also to take into account is to for everything to work and happens, you need to check that you have the user access there. So you see that, for instance, my Various account got the Azure AI user role. You need to do that, otherwise your Azure identity won't be able to have access to the agent in Foundry. So please add that, and then you will have the complete flow set up to be able to do what we did at the beginning of the demo. So maybe we can go back into VS. So you see that it worked. This is so I hope you won't have to do that when you will test on your side, but now you know how to bypass it if needed. Then I need to deploy to the cloud. So deploy to the cloud is basically compiling the .NET app and send that to the Azure service, the app services. So it should be fairly quick on this side. So you see that we currently have access to the deployment status. and it's being deployed. So everything should be set up now. So I just forgot to give a different name to my agent. So, so I'm probably going to have 2 agents if I'm refreshing there. So I guess the right one should be the last one. So let's wait for a second. Yeah, here it is. But now I've got another agent. So the first time I'm going to call you, to call the agent, I could have kind of a timeout because the app service the app service plan that we decided to use is fairly limited. So let's give it a try. But if it works, we should see the various steps of the negotiation. So it should try to set up the SSO part. So for that, I should be prompted to sign in. So let's wait for it. If I can see the sign in button, it means that the app service managed to boot completely the service. If not, I will just have to give it a second try, usually. So I guess we are in.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, as you said, we only picked a B1 plan, which is the basic one, which is very slow. So the first startup is always a failure. You can mitigate that by changing the plan to something more powerful but more expensive. And this was a sample. We wanted to be conservative here.
Yeah, if you got more money than us. So you see that it was a timeout because it's directly shown there. So I know that if I'm doing a new session, I'm fairly confident that this time it will work better. So because we should have every DLL load in the service. So this time it should be able to call the service. So let's wait for it. Or maybe we'll have a second timeout. No, yeah. So he asked to sign in. So I'm going to sign in.
So here we're getting a signing request because you need to consent for that Azure permission we just mentioned. So that's something you can remove if we were to go in Entra ID and do an admin consent, and therefore the flow would be fully transparent. But let's do it the first time so everybody understand what consent means. Here we have Entra ID saying, hey, the application is asking for the user impersonation, which is the role for calling the Foundry agent. Yeah. So you can accept just for yourself, or you can click consent on the behalf of your organization, and then anybody using your agent won't have that experience. It will be fluid.
Yes, this is a great feedback. So people are fully in control and understand that maybe I'm not trusting whoever decided to put in place this agent, so I'm still in control. Of course, I know you, Eric. I know that you did some great work, so I'm going to trust you. And I'm even going to trust for the complete organization. So I'm going to accept. So it means that the next call won't have to do that, or another user that will have to do that won't be forced to say that. So you see that we now connecting to the agent, and now is going to search for the same information. So we managed to put in place the very same agent call from scratch. In less than 20 minutes, I guess. So there's a lot of setup in place for you. What we wanted also to tell you, like maybe not everything will work immediately. So we have in place App Insight. So feel free to have a look to App Insight and see live metric there. So same, the VM is fairly small. Sometimes it takes time to connect. But then you will have access, thanks to the deployment, to live metrics, which is super useful because can see sometimes what's going wrong.
Well, let's send another message.
Let's try it again. Should be faster because we are caching then the access to the agent. So the second call should be faster. So you see that now he's sending immediately the request. And now you can see the various posts being done. So you can debug if you have like a 401, 404 or whatever. Maybe you did a mistake when you was filling the two properties. So it's a great way to check that. And also in the code, we have something in the C# main C# code. So you can disable SSO. If you disable SSO, meaning if you enable this flag, then you will be able to only test the connection between your dev machine and the Azure Foundry agent. Of course, you need to log in with the CLI with an account that is allowed to do the call, because everything is secured. And at last, Eric spent a lot of time, if you like to run the code locally and debug the complete flow this time, like SSO, like we demonstrated. You are forced to have something in Azure to do that. So this is what you did, Eric, meaning if I'm pressing F5,
if you press F5, there is a separate provision task that just create an Azure bot service and provide it just to create a tunnel, a dev tunnel between your machine and that one in a separate resource group, so you can keep stuff separated, the Azure deployment and the local deployment.
Perfect. So I hope you will have everything set up for you to take any existing Foundry agent and deploy that to M365 and Teams. Please know also that we are using the M365 Agent SDK for that. So you have also additional channel if you like. If I'm going inside the portal of Azure, if I'm going in the bot, you will see that we have many channels configured there. The main one is Teams, which is the same one used for M365 Copilot. But you have other channels. You can, for instance, have support for Slack, for Twilio, for Telegram. So it's just another channel configuration that will have access the same way to your Foundry agent. Of course, in this case, you won't have the M365 Copilot license, so it's going to depend on the type of agent you're building. It's up to you also maybe to check that in the code to see who's got access to the Copilot license and have many branch code in your agent. But this is everything we wanted to show you also a deep dive of everything you need to know. There is a lot of knowledge, but this sample should help you to start with fairly quickly. And feel free to open issues if you think that something is missing. Thanks a lot, Eric, for your amazing work. Like you've been working hard on simplifying that for people.
Well, and we dump a lot of information in the Markdown documentation of the sample, so don't hesitate to look into it. There is a lot of goodies and drawings on the flows for the authentication and different steps.
Yep. I've learned a lot thanks to you. I hope you people will learn a lot also thanks to Eric's work on my sample. And thanks a lot for listening. See you.
Bye, everyone.